Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video I'll be discussing my Spring 2019 anime watch list. This is everything I have officially decided to stick with watching in the Spring 2019 season of anime, and we're just going to get right into it. I've bracketed this up days of the week, and starting us off, we'll be looking at Sundays, where I've got 3 shows that I'm watching. The first one is Fairy Gone, which is something that really harkens back to me the classic series Witch Hunter Robin, from the animation style to the characterization, kind of an almost alternate steampunk universe feel vibe to it, dealing with these fairies, as the title suggests, which are these otherworldly kind of almost alien beings. I mean, I don't think they're actually aliens, but there's this whole idea of symbiosis between humanity and these fairies, which are these creatures that are super powered, supernatural, and everything like that. And certain kinds of fairies can merge, can meld with human beings. And in a time of war, like sort of a World War I aesthetic, soldiers were imbued with these abilities, linked with these fairies, and that made their ferocity on the battlefield that much more, insane. And so, we sort of ramp it up to modern day as of the setting, not like, the modern era of our world, but sometime after the war has ended and everything. It's somewhat peacetime. But there is a special organization that is going and looking for sort of the illegal use of and perversion of these fairies and things like that. And so there are some conspiratorial, segments from everything from the mafia to the special organizations, and people are trying to sort of steal information about these fairies and how to merge humanity with them, and the kinds that are needed in order to bring that about, and such like that. It's just really intriguing. Just a few episodes into it already, I really love it. I love the world building, I love the characters, and again, because so much of it in style and how it's being doled out, and the visual flair of the animation and the character designs, it all harkens back to me Witch Hunter Robin, which I really loved. And I haven't actually been able to watch in a long time. I used to own Witch Hunter Robin on DVD. I had a whole DVD box set, but I had to sell it off to make ends meet. But this show is reminding me a lot of that. And for it, it's one of my top picks, to watch this season. Coming in secondarily on Sundays is Nande Koko ni Sensei ga, or alternatively, Why the Hell Are You Here, Teacher? Short subject comedy series, somewhat perverted. But I think the thing that attracts me to it, in spite of its perverted, comedic beats and everything like that, is because it kind of flips on the ear the more tried and true. You have a younger character being obsessed with an older character, and awkward situations playing out. Whereas, the sort of main character of this show is while not a young adult, he's almost into adulthood, much older than most, characters in a sort of framework like this in anime typically are. But it's almost kind of reversed, because his teacher, who is, by the way, a former school chum of his mother, to give you an idea of how much older she is than he, seems to have a little bit of an interest in him. It's kind of reversed, whereas she has an interest in him, but it's a little bit more sheepish, very tsundere and everything like that. But it's played for laughs, because they're always, fitted into these really awkward situations. And I just like the underwriting thing where, while the teacher is very reluctant to admit it, she does kind of have a growing appreciation and perhaps feelings for this cat who's kind of her student. And the whacked out part of it is that his mother is all for their coupling. She's actually trying to promote it, trying to get them together. I want my son with my best friend from school days. And it's insane, and it's hilarious. It's definitely per a certain kind of taste when it comes to anime. But it's made me chuckle, and I just like that role reversal, where it's the teacher kind of wanting the kid, in a sense. He's not really a kid, almost young adult age, but rather than, again, like sort of the more typical, you see like a child, whether male or female, being obsessive about an adult, that they look up to or something like that. And so it kind of breaks tradition a little bit. I mean, there have been other anime series like that, that go a little bit against the mold and such, but this one just hits me in the right way where it makes me laugh constantly. And then rounding us out on Sundays, we have Shometsu Toshi, which is kind of an interesting series. It really, in its animation style and thus far the way the story is playing out, kind of reminds me of Dimension W from a couple of years back, which I didn't really have a high love for. Dimension W was a little bit all over the place for me. But this show, it's kind of reminding me a little bit of Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, in that it has thus far in its first 3 episodes kind of an episodic feel, where there was this big grand catastrophe called The Lost or something like that. And the main characters, you're following around this dude on like a moped and this chick who seems to have lost her memory. Everyone, these like secret organizations, these militaristic organizations, everyone is bearing down on them and wants this girl back for some reason, and you have no idea why. So it's like a sort of a road trip anime where they're trying to get to the center of where this catastrophe happened in Lost or whatever it's called, to try to put the puzzle pieces together. But like, as of the third episode was my favorite thus far as of the time of this recording, because it was kind of like a time loop episode dealing with Japanese idol girls. And it hit me in the right way, that third episode, where I was like, oh, I kind of hope the rest of it plays out like this, because this was actually kind of intriguing, how it was time looping and how they had to figure out, breaking free of it and all this kind of stuff. I have no idea where this show is going. I have no idea what the grand scheme of it is all about, but I'm intrigued to stick with it, because especially after that third episode, I was like, oh, damn, okay. I'm kind of digging this. Let's see where it goes. So that brings us on to Mondays, where I'm watching 3 shows as well. The ever-continuing and awesome sauce Dororo is the first one that I have on my list. Don't really need to go into it if you haven't been watching it. I highly suggest you go back and check it out. But if you have been watching it, you know how awesome sauce it is, so I don't really need to explain. Secondarily on Mondays is Namu Amida Butsu Rendai Utina, which is this really charming... I saw somebody mention on my anime list that this was, just a trash sort of show for the female anime viewers who like the pretty boys and stuff like that. But it's actually turned out to be a really charming, funny, and heartwarming little series about these deities, these various deities in Japanese mythology who are sort of earthbound because their mission statement is trying to sort of assuage the vices, the cloudy vices that murk up humanity. Like if you have an obsession with something that's kind of a little abnormal, and it's ruining your life, you have like this cloudy black substance growing on, your shoulders and things like that. And if it becomes too overbearing, they have to step in order to quell that, so you can sort of be brought back to an equilibrium of happiness and contentment and that kind of thing. But thus far, where a lot of the charming aspect of it and humorous aspect of it comes to the fore, is the fact that like the 2 main characters that you're focused upon, that's what they're supposed to be doing on Earth, but they're, for all intents and purposes, being told, take a break, take a vacation. You don't need to do that right now, and they're chomping at the bit. They want to go kill the vices, quell the vices. And so it's sort of like an almost slice of life comedy sort of feel-good series, but revolving around these deities when they have their off time, when they're not going out busting heads, And I really enjoy it. It really is sort of a like feel-good, vibe kind of a watch, and I appreciate it for that. Rounding us off with Mondays is Robi Hachi, which I love. I get a mad kick out of it. It reminds me, I wrote like a list of a bunch of things it reminds me of. Those being Double Decker, Doug and Kirill, Planet With from a couple of seasons ago, and SSSS Gridman. In its animation style, in its aloofness, if you will, in its, predominance of hilarity and absurdity, it's just a really fun series. I mean, how else can you describe basically a futuristic, like interplanetary society where the main character is on the run because he owes money. He's got debts, and to some of the wrong people, by the way, who are inept in their own accord because they don't know, where he's going to end up every given episode. They're like backtracking where he was the last time, and he's already moved on somewhere else. That kind of thing. It's like a cat and mouse chase. But he is sidled up with his chief debt collector that was hired to come grab him. And they're both going on adventures together, and then they inadvertently find that their spaceship houses these two mini shuttles that can form together into this giant robot that was based on a classic anime from like the 60s within their universe, that lasted for like one season and then it disappeared. How do they have a giant robot mecha that's actually the legitimization of this fictional world that I think the main character's father maybe created or something like that, or animated or worked on, was the director for? It's just whacked out hilarity in this spacefaring futuristic sort of environment, and it's everything I could want from such a show. So I'm enjoying the hell out of it. And that brings us on to Tuesdays, wherein I'm also watching 3 shows, and that begins us off with the ever-continuing Black Clover. Just had their 80th episode as of the time of this recording, and I frickin' loved the ending of this, where we saw Asta and Luck and Magna all, and the whole Black Bulls team. If you haven't been watching the show, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but they all jumped in at the last second to save one of their own who is often put upon, and just growing familiar with these characters and being along for their journey of going on self-exploration individually, but then as a team and collectively coming together. All of those brownie points that have been earned and then some came to a head, came to the fore in the finale of this episode, where they all jumped in to save one of their own, and it was just badass as all hell. And that's what this show's proving to be. So many badass moments and inspiring moments that it just astounds me that I almost didn't give the show a chance. I was ready to call it quits after episode 6 such a long time ago now, but I'm loving it. Secondarily, on Tuesdays, we have the series, A Girl Who Chants Love at the Bound of This World. I have no idea what that means. The bound. What is the bound? But I'm actually really enjoying it. It's another series that reminds me of Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. There's, hints at time and dimensional travel and things like that. Perhaps touching upon the multiverse, which, because I'm a sci-fi fan and very much scientific theory, fan, things like that. I like those aesthetics, those aspects of it. Thus far, the only time travel we've actually seen is the main character was able to rewind his own personal self 24 hours previously. But I don't know if it was legitimate time travel where he tripped back in time, or if perhaps he opened like a wormhole or a portal that allowed him to trip over into another dimension that's coinciding with his own, perhaps a little behind time-wise. There's still a lot of questions up in the air as far as this device that he got. His father had gone missing and was recently pronounced dead, but then after he was, legally pronounced dead, he got a package in the mail from his father containing this little sort of sci-fi device, and then subsequently he also got a little notebook telling him how to use the device from his father as well. And so for all intents and purposes, he's getting sort of the hints and whispers that his father is not in fact dead, but had tripped over into another dimension or something along those lines. And so it's really, again, it's really early going. Lots of questions. Don't really know exactly how this is going to play out or shape up, but it's sort of, the original source material was precursor to things like Steins Gate and such like that. I don't think it's going to be as depth-laden and character-laden as Steins Gate was. This feels a little bit more goofy, a little bit more aloof. I don't know if it's going to have a dramatic pang like Steins Gate did. But it's curious. It's a curious series, and I'm enjoying watching it thus far. And so it's number 2 on my Tuesdays. And then rounding us off for Tuesdays is, of course, One Punch Man Season 2, which I'm covering in episodic discussions, reviews, and so not much needs to be said there. It's just balls to the wall awesome sauce. Not pitch perfect as compared to the first season, but enough so that I'm loving every dripping minute of it. And so that brings us on to Wednesdays, where I'm watching 2 series, and that begins us off with the ever continuing The Rising of the Shield Hero, which continues to push my buttons, man, with all the characters who are against our titular hero, the Shield hero himself, and trying to manipulate scenarios into making him look like a criminal and untrustworthy, and having slaves, and being a bigger malady than the actual big bad of these vortexes that open up, and all these creatures, these evil creatures come out and everything like that. They're trying to primp him up as though he is the biggest villain in the world, when he's probably going to be their savior when everything is said and done. Just an awesome sauce series. I really love it. And then following on from there on Wednesdays is Meddlesome Kitsune Senko-san, which is a really sort of relaxing, feel-good vibe, kind of calming, passive watch of a series, very much to do with this cat who is like an office worker, and one day he comes home from a really, really long day of working to the bone, to the max, and he's got this little sort of what looks like a little fox girl, but she's supposed to be like 800 years old, like a deity or something like that. And her sole purpose is to make him relax and make him feel better after so much of the tumultuous daily working life and that kind of thing, to the grindstone, and trying to make him rebound from that. And for all intents and purposes, the entire premise could be perverted and sick and all that kind of stuff, but it's really not. It's honestly not. It's really sort of charming and heartwarming, and just a feel-good, relaxing kind of thing to see this person who is so put upon and facing such daily sort of rigmarole that it's really siphoning his life energy to sort of get a recuperation out of it, out of her taking care of him and things like that. There's something oddly satisfying about it, about watching it, even though if you're somebody who deals with hardship all the time yourself, you're kind of left like feeling, oh man, I could use that. I could use, can I go get a massage, please? Can I get some relaxation time myself, the way this guy is, but there's like a history that is yet to unfold, yet to be fully revealed as well, between this guy who seems to have flashback memories of encountering this fox girl when he was a child, and some familial tie to his grandmother and things like that, some linkage, connective tissue between them that I think they're going to slowly dole out, reveal as the series goes on. So that proves to be a little bit more, adding a level of intrigue to it, as well as being relaxing. And that's Wednesdays in a nutshell. So that brings us on to Thursdays, where I'm watching 2 series as well. And the first one starting us off on Thursdays is Carol and Tuesday. I absolutely loved it from the first PV I ever saw. I knew I was going to be watching it and loving it, and I had no idea 2 episodes in until a friend of mine told me over on Facebook that the director behind this was Shinichiro Watanabe, who is most known for, among others, as I have listed here, Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, Kids on the Slope, Terror in Resonance, Ergo Proxy, et al., and several other series that he's worked on, between being, an organizer director, to being a storyboard artist, to all this kind of stuff. It's just such a great series from right off the bat. I love the 2 main female characters who, we have one girl who's sort of been an orphan and grown up on the streets, had to make ends meet of her own accord, learn her way in the world, and contrasted to that, juxtaposed to that, is the little rich girl who's run away from home because of dissatisfaction, having everything handed to her, but at the same time being told she can't pursue her dreams of wanting to create music and be an artist and all this kind of stuff. And both of them have these musical aspirations. So when they find each other, which, arguably they come together maybe a little bit too easily at the beginning of the series, it's just been really resounding and satisfying to see them already beginning what the series, basically the narrator, purports is going to be this grand epic journey where they create beautiful music together. And we've already got a sampling of that. They're sort of practicing in the first episode. They're having like a jamming session where the girl from the streets who's basically like, she's come up with this melody But then we have the little rich girl who puts words to it, and these very longing sentiments, and they sort of, kit bash ideas, and they put together this song that we hear almost in full. It's like a minute and a half in length. It's not like a full song length, but we hear it for all intents and purposes completed, almost completed by episode 2. It's called "The Loneliest Girl," and it's so meticulous and beautiful. The melody, the sentiments of the lyrics themselves legitimately brings me to tears, because of the harmony and just how beautiful it is. And I love it. I love this series. It is a top contender. I'm just going to say it right now, even though this is only my watch list and we're only a few episodes into most of these series. It's a heavy contender for my favorite of the spring 2019 season. And then following on from there, to round us out for Thursdays, is Sarah's Anmai, which is insanity incarnate. The director is notorious for having produced some really whacked out series in the past. I have no familiarity with those series or his previous works or himself, that kind of thing. But we're talking Kappas, if you know what Kappas are. They are very much focused on pulling out the desire that exists in this fictional, sort of body part through the anus. They go in through the anus. So we're just going to get right down to brass tacks. They go in through the anus, they pull it out, they siphon out your life's energy. But there's a lot more going on in this series. You've got 3 main protagonists, and all of them come from different walks of life. They all have different dreams and aspirations and wishes, and they all have secrets that are, sort of every episode thus far. I think we're only 2 in as of the time of this recording, are being revealed, mostly inadvertently and against their wishes, but for the greater good in the end. And it coincides with when they have to sort of band together. They are destroying these creatures, who are sort of anti-Kappa in a way. But for the purposes of attaining these plates of hope, is what basically, like, the King Kappa calls them. And if they get 5 of them, then any wish they want will be granted. And at least 2 of them thus far have revealed to we the viewer, not so much to each other, that their wishes are selfless wishes. They're not selfish. They're not thinking about themselves. They're thinking about, in the case of both these characters, their brothers, and something that would bring about happiness for their respective brothers. And so, amidst all of the absolute just insanity and absurdity, there's a little bit of heart underwriting, and so it's kind of like a car crash, like that old cliche, like you can't seem to look away, even though how bad it is, how crazy it is. That's what this show is for me. It's like I'm just watching it, like, huh, the whole time. So that is Thursdays in a nutshell. Bringing us on, of course, to Fridays, where I'm watching 2 shows as well. And we begin that off with Sanrio Girl, which is a short subject series basically focusing on a Japanese style of poetry or something like that, But it's really got a lot of charm to it in its characters. The main female character, she doesn't speak. I mean, there is a seiyuu, there is a voiceover, but for the most part, she only writes down whatever she's thinking or wanting to say. And she does it in this sort of, style, this poetic style that the whole series is focused upon. And she kind of has it in for this guy who's like in the little poetry club or writing club with her, who everyone is afraid of and thinks is a delinquent and such like that. And so a lot of the comedy is derived out of the fact that people mistake him for being a delinquent and think he's bad news. And they don't understand why she has any interest in him and everything like that. And he's kind of oblivious to her interest in him, so it's kind of a learning curve for him as well. It's just really cute and sweet and funny. And because it is a short subject, usually like 12 minutes in length, it's a no-brainer for Fridays to watch as something charming and feel good, and I really enjoy it. And then as well on Fridays is Hitoribachi's Lifestyle, which is kind of similar in that there is an element of a feel-good vibe, sort of a passive watch vibe, but while it is somewhat cute and funny, there are elements to it that also annoy me a little bit with the main character, who is very sheepish, very nerve-wracked. As soon as she finds out her friend is going to show up 5 minutes late to a meeting, she thinks the world is ending and the friend doesn't want anything to do with her anymore and all this kind of stuff. I had thought when I read the synopsis and seen the initial PV that it was going to be somewhat akin to Watamote, where the main character is really super socially inept, has been, sort of closeted her whole life, and is trying to venture out into the world and make friends and that kind of thing. And there would be a little bit more emphasis on drama and insanity and things like that in her trying to do this. Not really. While it is somewhat cut from similar cloth, this is much more lighthearted, much more comedic and such like that. But it's kind of annoying how inept the main character is. Her failings to just appreciate anything, even remotely approaching normalcy in social interactivity. She's made 2 friends as of the time of this recording, like 3 episodes in, whatever it is, 2 or 3 episodes. And she's sick and out for 1 day in school, and she's texting them, "Don't forget about me. I'm so and so. Remember we made friends." I don't know. It goes a little bit beyond the edge of tolerance as far as being funny. It gets a little annoying because of how repetitive it is. But with that all being said, my favorite character is the Sunao character, who kind of akin to the Senryu Girl, series. She's female and she's blonde, much as the male character who is blonde in Senryu Girl. She is constantly, though, mistaken for being a delinquent. And a lot of the hilarity and some of the drama surrounding her character, who is, by the way, the best character of the show. She's the best girl of the show. A lot of that comedy and drama is derived around that fact that people keep misinterpreting her as being a delinquent. And so it is enjoyable. I'm still watching it. It hasn't been so frustrating that I'm like, I can't watch this. But it does get a little annoying with the main character, how she chicken littles all the friggin' time and ad infinitum, ad nauseum, But that rounds us out for Fridays, and then we are on to Saturdays, the final day of the week, with 5 series that I am watching. And the first one I have on my list is Demon Slayer, which is really, it's been good so far. I just saw a recent announcement that it's going to be 26 episodes, so 2 core series, all about demons and training to fight them. The main character, his whole family was slaughtered by a demon or demons, all with the exception of his younger sister, who has been now transformed into one. And but there's something unique in the bond between them, where she recognizes him as her sibling, and so she won't attack him. And there's a whole group of demon slayers, as per the title, that one of which finds them shortly after they're making a run for it, trying to escape the forest where their family was slaughtered. And this guy perceives, okay, there's something weird about these two. She's not actively trying to kill him. She's actually trying to protect his life, unlike any other demon transformation they've ever seen before. So he points them toward this sort of demon slaying master, and thus his training begins, because even this master appreciates the fact that whatever the bond there is that exists between them, they're both trying to preserve and save each other. Even though she's a demon, even though he wants to become a demon slayer, his whole mission statement now, the main character's, is to find the demon that slaughtered his family and transformed his sister. Thus kind of hoping, I think, in the vampire aesthetic, if he kills that demon, if he dispatches that demon, she will revert back to being human. And it remains to be seen if that's going to happen successfully. But I'm enjoying it. I love the animation style, the look, the flair of it, and everything like that. And it's been enjoyable. So secondarily, on Saturdays, we have Nobunaga Sensei no Osana Zuma, which is the only one out of everything I've watched 2 episodes of thus far that I'm really highly calling into question if I'm really going to sit through this anymore, because I didn't exactly know. I was kind of hoping it was like the what the hell are you doing here teacher series, where it's kind of pervy, it's kind of comedic, but this one has really kind of pushed the lines, because the titular character, Nobunaga-san, is a teacher in the modern era. And one day he's like cleaning out his garage or something like that, and he knocks over a mystical thing which breaks and shatters and pulls from the distant past this little girl, a very legitimate human little girl, who is meant, I think she's like 14 years old, who's meant to be the wife of the Nobunaga of Japanese history. And so the purported hilarity is supposed to come out of the sort of misunderstanding that this Nobunaga is not the same Nobunaga, and she is very aggressive for what is supposed to be a little girl character to get impregnated, and she's constantly disrobing. And it just, I don't know, like, I'm not comfortable watching it. I've watched the first 2 episodes just kind of out of trying to answer to the sheer horror of if that is in fact the direction they're going with this, that it's so perverse and it's so disgusting that this little girl character is basically trying to expose herself to this guy. And then, like, in the second episode, there's a rivalry between one of his students and this little girl, and it's just sick and twisted. And I'm very likely going to be dropping it because it's not at all what I expected it was going to be. But because I have watched 2 episodes of it, I had to include it on this list just to, as a talking point, just to be like, if you are going to watch a series like this, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with the people who created the series? It's nasty. It's sick. So that's the one down note out of everything I'm watching. Following on from there, number 3 spot on Saturdays is Bokutachi wa Benkyo ga Dekanai, and also known as We Never Learn. And this series very much is cut from similar cloth to last season's quintessential quintuplets, which I actually really enjoyed. Only in this series, it's not so much like harem-esque, where all of the female characters could be interested in the main guy. There's really only one of the 3 main female characters who's interested in him. And, you're kind of going to be watching and hoping that she builds up the courage to reveal that at some point. But for all intents and purposes, you have these 2 geniuses in this school that nobody can seem to effectively tutor outside of what their purview is, what subjects they are geniuses in. Say, for example, one is a science genius and things like that, can't really understand more social aspects and communicative aspects between human beings. Very much more technically minded, can't really understand empathy and literature and that kind of thing. The other is kind of a polar opposite, where she does have more artistic genius qualities, can read and write and do all that kind of stuff, but then can't understand mathematics and such like that. So they have looked long and hard for somebody who can successfully tutor them outside of these subjects that they are just hardcore geniuses in, and they found one in the form of the main character, the main student character, and then the third wheel character, the female that actually has an interest in him, comes along. She's like a school swim team and such like that, but her grades are poor. So it turns out he's got to tutor all 3 of these girls, and it's just really charming and funny, and I've been really enjoying it. And then coming in the 4th spot on Saturdays is Kono Oto Tomare, or Stop This Sound, which is a series that has proven to be a little more frustrating than I had first assumed it would be. Having read the synopsis and looked at the PV, I thought it was going to be something a little more closely approaching Sound Euphonium, which I loved and adored both seasons of. One of my all-time favorite anime series was Sound Euphonium. And this is kind of a similar aesthetic, where a group of characters who are all coming together for all intents and purposes for this musical club, which is very much under the threat of being disbanded and shut down entirely. But for all intents and purposes, the thing I don't like is most of the characters are unlikable. The main focused upon character, the sort of holdover from the previous music club, the Kodo Club, he's very oafish, very reserved, very sheepish, very nerve-wracked. Kind of akin to what I was talking about, the Hattori Bachi's Lifestyle series. It's just really annoying how sheepish and not forthright that he is. And then contrasting to that, you have another character, another blonde character, who's being constantly mistaken for being a delinquent and unlikable and bad news, because he had some bad ties with some actual legitimate delinquents. They had trashed his grandfather's store. The grandfather had like a heart attack and soon after died, and so all the blame has been put on him because he looks the typical blonde delinquent, everything like that. And then you've got the third character is this female character who comes from a Kodo family. The whole family has been playing the instrument for eons or whatever it is. She has a lot of lineage, and they operate a school that, teaches the use of this particular instrument, all this kind of stuff. So she has all this history, but she is a grade A bitch. She's completely unlikable. She comes in heartwarming and likable, ear to ear grinning, but then as soon as she realizes she doesn't have to peruse, she doesn't have to put on the act, she's just a C, a big C word in the face of these other characters. And so it's really frustrating because, at least with Sound Euphonium, there were characters that you could like. There were some annoying characters, but there were characters you were attracted toward, their aspirations, what they were trying to achieve, the heartening, aspects of the drama of their lives that drew you in. And at least with this series thus far, none of the characters are really likable. None of them are really attractive. None of them are really anything I have any care or concern about. They're just mostly like abrasive, and I don't like them. So I don't even know if I'm going to continue watching this series. I may just to see how it plays out, see if they lighten up at all, because as with most series where it's like a musical instrument club or something like that, they're trying to get their club together. There's already talk of let's try to get to nationals and things like that, much as was the case in Sound Euphonium, but I don't know if it's going to be a likable journey or not, quite frankly. And so that brings us on to the final show of Saturdays, and for all intents and purposes, this list of the spring 2019 season, the ever-continuing Gegege no Kitaro, which is all kinds of awesome sauce. I've talked about it before in these, watch list and end of season favorites and everything else videos that I do. But it's just a really awesome series, and it's been around for a little while now. It's been a few seasons going, just continuing on through, but it's been getting better every step of the way. Taking twists and turns with the characters, Kitaro himself, the main titular character, but all of his yokai friends and everything like that, the human characters, they've really been breaking ground and doing things that are largely unexpected, and but surprisingly so, and satisfyingly so, and just telling a really good yarn, spinning a really good yarn. So that is everything. If you've made it to this point in the video, that is everything from my spring 2019 watch list, only one or two of which I'm really calling into question if I'm going to even bother continuing, but everything else I'm actually really enjoying to varying degrees. It's going to be sort of hard maybe to pick once the season is done which has been elevated up to my top favorite, but that'll remain to be seen. And so at this juncture, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you are watching for the spring 2019 season. Your favorites, your less thans, anything you've already dropped, and this, that, and the other thing, all that good stuff. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to consider supporting my channel, please have a look at my PayPal support link posted both in the description as well as the comments below. It affords you opportunities very much akin to Patreon, where you can set up a monthly recurring contribution, a one-time only kind of thing. Send me a personal message alongside any contribution you send my way, requesting topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, or make recommendations of things I may check out and would shout you out down the line if I end up discussing, all that good stuff. And anything you saw fit to send my way would be 2 thumbs up for me in securing my longevity on YouTube for the foreseeable future, and just very much appreciated if you took the time. And so yeah, otherwise I'll see you again at the end of the season to tell you all about what really stood out, what was really elevated up to my favorites, and anything that fell short of that, with the favorites and everything else. And until that time, I'll catch you all later. Peace.